Today on Mysteries of Mystara, Killer Plants of Mystara.
So when it comes to monster encounters, creatures in Mystara, some of you may have heard me explain this before. I'll try to be quick because some of you haven't. But for the first two editions of the D&D game, first edition and second edition, the D&D product line was divided into two brands. There was D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And these two product, and then in third edition they kind of fixed it and they just lumped it all together and called it Dungeons and Dragons. But the AD&D and D&D product lines for first edition and second edition were really rather separate. And one of the separatenesses that you can see is in the development of the monsters and creatures. So there were monsters and creatures that are from traditionally AD&D worlds like Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk and Dragonlance that you wouldn't find in the world of Mystara, which was the basic D&D world. So one of the things Mystara got was they got a bunch of carnivorous plants that were not really carried over to other worlds, didn't show up in AD&D Monster Manual, stuff like that. Now, one of them did make it into Ravenloft, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But I'm going to divide the carnivorous plants in two ways: passive plants and active plants. And then I'm going to divide them into mobile plants and immobile plants. So there's 5 plants I'm going to get into here. The first two are the passive plants, and they're immobile. So they're immobile and they're passive. They don't move and they don't eat you directly. So and these are grabgrass. Yeah, that's a pun. So it's not crabgrass with a C, it's grabgrass with a G. And amber lotus flowers. Now these are passive. They don't eat you directly. They're immobile. They don't move around. Grabgrass actually reaches up and grabs you. I've seen pictures in old D&D books where they portray grabgrass grabbing a deer in the forest, or I'm sure grabgrass would grab a raccoon or a squirrel or a rabbit or any something in the forest that not just people. But grabgrass basically holds you down, and if you are not strong enough to escape, if you can't get away, then eventually you would starve to death or thirst to death, or some predator would come along and kill you. And then when you rot into the ground, your body rots into the ground, that would nourish the grabgrass. Amber lotus flowers are kind of the same way. They're kind of passive aggressive. Amber lotus flowers, when they sense motion nearby, they will release sleep spores. And of course, if you fail your saving throw to resist that, you fall down, and hopefully some of your other party members would make their saving throws and wake you up again, because you can be woken up like just from a sleep spell. You can be woken up. But if the whole party fell asleep, or if somebody in the D&D world was alone in the forest and they got knocked out, then they're fair prey for a predator or something. And so the grabgrass and amber lotus flowers are like passively aggressive. The grabgrass restrains you, the amber lotus flowers knock you out, and then if you starve or thirst to death because you can't get away from the grabgrass for several days, or if a predator comes along and gets you and you're helpless because you're asleep or you're grabbed by the grabgrass, then you nourish the soil there. Now the next category, this one is also immobile, but it is much more aggressive. And these are killer trees. Now, my friend Murray in Australia, who's one of our players in Game Shop's basement, and he's awesome. He's extremely funny, extremely witty, very charming man. If you haven't played with him, you should. But he pointed out that the killer trees, in his opinion, were just like reskinned ropers. So you may be more familiar with ropers because they've been in Monster Manual for a long time in every edition of the game. And killer trees are just what they sound like. They're trees. The original description of them actually says that they're part tree, part animal, and they do need to eat flesh to supplement their diet. So killer trees are immobile. They cannot follow you. They do not pull up their roots and walk around in any kind of a fantasy way like that. However, several of their branches are actually disguised tentacles. They're tentacles that look like branches. Remember they said killer trees are part animal? And these tentacles will reach out and they will try to pull you into the tree's mouth where the tree can eat you. So yeah, the trees open up with a mouth, kind of like the trees from Lord of the Rings. Not the Ents. The Ents are cool, but like the Old Man Willow. You know, those the nasty trees that want to eat people. So killer trees are immobile. If a party is attacked by killer trees and nobody's restrained, they could run away and be safe as long as it's not an entire forest of killer trees. But yeah, so killer trees cannot follow you. Now the last category here includes plants that are both aggressive and mobile. They can actually pull up their roots and walk around, and these would include archer bushes and vampire rose bushes. And the vampire rose bushes actually got used in Ravenloft setting. I'll save them for last because they're the you know, kind of like the coolest, I think. Very dangerous, but the coolest. So archer bushes, they are bushes that have thorns, and if you know anything about plants or botany, you may know that plants have this thing called root pressure. You know, when they pull up water from the soil that they grow in, this water builds up pressure inside the plant. And some of the uses that these plants use in real life is sometimes that water pressure helps hold the plant up. Like, you know, we have skeletons and muscles that help hold us up as human beings. Plants also have to have a way to hold themselves up. Well, archer bushes use some of that root pressure, and they use it when it builds up in their plant stems and branches and stuff to shoot their thorns as missile volleys. And so the archer bushes shoot their thorns as missile volleys. Archer bushes can slowly move. You can run away from them if you're not encumbered and you're a normal functioning, you know, human or other player character race. You can run away from them. They move, but they don't move fast. But all the archer bush encounters I've ever seen in old D&D modules involve way more than one. Like, you move into like a patch of them, and by the time they start firing at your party's surrounded. And they're coming at your party from all sides with these volleys of thorns. And then the last one is the vampire rose bushes. Vampire rose bushes can also move slowly. They look white when they have not been fed, so they're like these beautiful white roses, and they can attack and you know, entangle and constrict and wound people. They have with their very sharp, thorny vines, and then the roses can actually suck your blood. And so once the vampire rose bush has been fed, then the roses are red. They're blood red. And so vampire rose bushes did actually get used in the Ravenloft setting. They started Mystara. So the 5 killer plants of Mystara that we've gotten into today include grabgrass, amber lotus flowers, killer trees, archer bushes, and vampire rose bushes. So when you're adventuring in Mystara, watch out for that and have fun with that.
Now, there is one player at our table who has a goal to grow and cultivate a lot of these killer plants and basically make a security garden. He is a 19th level mage, and that's kind of what he has envisioned for when he has a castle or something, is he wants to surround it with killer plants of Mystara. So watch out, Mystara's got some killer plants. Different ones than you may be used to from other D&D settings. Alright, so until next time, I'll see you in game.